for everyone. And so we've started the stream. So let's start this meeting off. Thank you for taking the time to join us this meeting for our February monthly general meeting of the La Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club. It's Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. I'm going to take a second and make sure I did that stream right. Looks like I did. Okay. I'm Mitch Wagner. I'm VP Communications for the club. We've got a packed meeting tonight with lots of great stuff for you. We're going to hear from California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber. We're going to hear from Nathan Fletcher, who's chair of the San Diego Board of Supervisors. And we have a panel on racial justice. Our first speaker is Dr. Weber. Prior to starting as California Secretary of State, Dr. Weber had a distinguished career in the State Assembly representing, well, she represented us, the 79th District, which includes La Mesa and the surrounding community. She's been a good friend to the club over the years, and so we're always pleased when we have an opportunity to have her back. Dr. Weber is pressed for time, so I'm going to turn the floor over to her now, and I'm going to unmute her, and I'm going to say, welcome, Dr. Weber. You are already unmuted. Welcome.
Well, thank you, and it's good to be here, to be with you, to be with the club that I think so highly of. I often kept my membership alive. I don't know if I have during COVID, since it's been difficult to do anything other than to Zoom everybody. But let me say, first of all, it's good to see all of you. And as usual, good to see so many who have joined us this evening. And I'm pleased to be back with you as your Secretary of State. You were, I haven't had a chance to chat with you since this new transition in position. And it's obviously been very, very busy. I say I take over the position of Secretary of State at a time when we are having elections after elections after elections. There have been so many elections for special elections, and we just had another one added yesterday when Autumn Burke decided to resign as a member of the Assembly. We've had a lot of resignations, which is really interesting in mid-year and in the middle of people's terms. And so it's been really very, very, very busy. And of course, the recall was no joke in terms of administering, having to administer a statewide election in a matter of months. Most folks get at least a year and a half or two before they do that. So but it's been fun. It's been my honor to be with you and to be with you today and to serve as the Secretary of State. Just let me talk about a couple of things. And then I wanted to kind of leave it open in case you have some questions, because I don't get a chance to talk to folks very often. And sometimes you do presentation, it's a hit and run, and you're out the door, and folks had questions they would like to ask. So I'm going to make sure that I leave at least enough time to answer some questions. Just let me give you a sense of what's happening, not only in Secretary of State's position, but really around the nation. You know, when I was asked by the governor to consider being Secretary of State, because I didn't lobby for the position, I didn't even think I'd ever be Secretary of State. It wasn't something on my agenda of things to do in my life. But the reason why people said, well, you know, you were doing such great work in the Assembly. You were basically dealing with the hard issues of social justice and police reform and all of those kinds of issues that really are critical issues that we face, as well as voting rights and making sure that those on parole could vote, making sure our ex-offenders knew about things, getting benefits for those who are wrongly accused of crime and getting them some sense of compensation for it. And all of those kinds of things. And so why are you going now to the Secretary of State? Do you see that'll be a downtime? Well, I thought hard and long about it when I was offered the position by the governor. And I said at the time, I said, you know, these are some very critical times. I said to the press when they asked me this question, I said, and our democracy at this point is very fragile. I said specifically, I said, this is a very fragile time. And this was December 20th in 2019. I said, our democracy is very fragile. And I said in 2020, excuse me. And I said, and you know, there's going to be a need for a strong advocate for voting rights and for people's rights and those kinds of things. I said, because we're in a very fragile time. Press didn't believe me. They said, why would you say that? You know, and of course, in less than a couple of weeks, January 6th happened. And we realized just how fragile our democracy is. It's very dependent upon people having goodwill and an interest and a commitment to the democracy that we have. And so as a result, we see how fragile it is and how critical it is to have individuals in the position of Secretary of State that's not willing, that's not going to bend and not going to be afraid and not going to cop out. The Secretary of State position, interestingly enough, across the nation has probably become the most controversial position of all of the elected statewide officers. People believe and as a result, what we're seeing right now, I'm a member of the National Association of Secretaries of State and a member also of the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State. And what we're seeing is a tremendous number of individuals running for the Secretary of State in this nation. A lot of them who've already committed themselves to believe that the election in 2020 was stolen and that our current president is not a legitimate president. And so we have a huge number of people across the nation running for secretaries of state with the idea that they would basically adhere to the concept of trying to overturn the election, invalidating elections, and supporting many of the pieces of legislation that's coming out of other states. I mean, we have some horrific pieces of legislation that have passed in terms of state houses and have been signed by the governor. And if implemented, would basically overturn our democratic process. We have states that believe that they can, that it's okay that if the legislature decides that they don't like the outcome of an election, that they can substitute the vote of the legislature for the vote of the people. This is unheard of, and yet it is what is being promulgated and ideas that are being supported, being passed in legislatures and being signed by governors. So we're at a critical time. And so as Secretary of State in California, you know, I'm battling occasionally the misinformation, the information out there about fraud and deception. We have some of that in California. Some of us don't believe it. We had to shut down a registrar of voters office the other day because of the attacks on that office in Sutter County. So we've had to, not only our registrar of voters, but those who work in those offices and those who work the polls are being threatened in many communities. And so we're having to work with our Attorney General to make sure that those folks are safe, that their addresses are not publicly given to others. And so many of them are really intimidated, and some are deciding not to work the polls, and some are actually resigning from their positions. So even in California, we have we have voter suppression occurring everywhere. We have those who are trying to, in small ways and in large ways, to subvert the process of voting. And even when our legislature has not passed legislation that, like other states, we have those who are putting together initiatives to put on the ballot to talk about the integrity of voting and passing various kinds of things, identification, so that we can have a smaller voter turnout. So even though California we have done some unique things in terms of voting, we should be proud of the fact that of the eligible persons to register to vote in California, we're about 90% right now of all eligible voters registered to vote, which is amazing. And that is because we've opened up the franchise so that people can register online, people can register through the DMV, and there's a host of ways in which people can register. We saw record turnout in voting in the presidential election. Over 80% of our folks went to vote who have registered to vote. And so we're seeing the progress that's there. We are working hard to register those. We're having a special town hall to talk about registration. We have registration campaigns on our university campuses so that when students can register for classes, they can register to vote. And Cal State Fullerton won in 2020. Cal State Chico won this past time during the recall. So we actually have our students working to register each other and then to figure out who had the greatest percentage of their registered voters who actually turned out to vote. So we have competition among our universities. We also have a pre-registration in our high schools in terms of making sure that at 16 and 17-year-olds, young people can register to vote. We register them to vote, and then we follow them for 2 years. And when it's time for them to vote at 18, they get a birthday card that tells them, now's your time to vote. You're eligible. You registered a year or 2 years ago. And so we do that in conjunction with a lot of the other community groups. But interestingly enough, as we work hard to increase our voting rolls and increase participation, there are those who are not happy with it. And as a result, we continue to have those who will look for ways to subvert the voting process and to make sure and to try to diminish the fact that so many people have registered to vote and participate in the process. And so as a result, they want to invalidate it. So we're working hard to make sure that in the Secretary of State's office that we are diligent and committed to do that. We watch very carefully all the issues, the cyber issues, the social media issues that are out there that are trying to undermine our efforts to validate voting and to basically make sure that our vote is secure and free and transparent for those who want to participate in it. So those are the things that we're involved in. Secretary of State's office is really, like I said, a quite interesting place. Most folks focus on the fact that we do elections, and that's a major portion. But in addition to that, keep in mind, we register all of our businesses, all of our nonprofits, and we're working on some workshops to help our nonprofits stay successful and to thrive. Most of our businesses now are digitized, thank goodness, so we can process our papers a lot faster and people can register their businesses faster. In addition to that, we also are in charge of California's archives, which if you haven't had a chance to go on our website and click on the archives, you have missed a treat. We have our archivist has tremendous resources, and they had a whole section on King recently and information about King in California. We did some things on the Robert Kennedy assassination and all the data and information that California has, and all the original things that we have are on display in the archives, but also online. And we're also expanding so that our archives actually represent California. So we're getting a lot of additional information in terms of women, in terms of we always have information on our governors, but really getting beyond that and getting into communities and organizations and our Native American community and all those kinds of things. So we're trying to make sure that the archives are truly a reflection of the history of California. So I'm going to stop at that point, but that's where we are. We're in the midst of getting ready for the next, well, we have several elections before the primary, but getting ready for the primary election. You've engaged already in the redistricting, and we know that we now have new lines that have been drawn. Thus far, we haven't had a lawsuit concerning the lines, which is shocking to our attorneys. People have two more days, I think, to actually file a lawsuit against redistricting. And he's keeping his fingers crossed because thus far we haven't had anyone to actually challenge and fight against redistricting. There was lots of input and lots of controversy surrounding it, but many of the things, I guess, when people evaluated, realized that it may work for the benefit of those in California in terms of the way the lines are drawn. So unlike other states, we do not have a lot of lawsuits being filed against us for redistricting that's there. So I'm going to stop at that point and give you a chance to ask me any question that you want to ask concerning the Secretary of State, concerning what we're doing with regards to elections and our processes for elections and what I foresee, if possible, what I foresee as the future of California with regards to how we're moving in so many different directions and even the issues of racial and social justice. As some of you know, I authored quite a few bills concerning that and continue to be involved with those issues, even in Secretary of State's office.
Yeah, I'd like to, I wonder if two of our members want to hear a little bit about reparations. I know there's been some progress on that this week. So can you update us on that, please?
Yes, I can give you some information on that. That was, I authored the bill for reparations 2131. And it's California is the first state to actually deal with the issue of reparations. And if you get a chance, they have a website in the Attorney General's office, and you can listen to some of the hearings. And they've been some interesting information that's there. I spoke at the Reparations Commission at the beginning, and I spoke at it this past week. They're looking at issues of eligibility right now. But what's happening with our Reparations Committee, we have a committee of 9 individuals, not chosen by me, chosen by various individuals to serve from a cross-section in California, to serve on the committee to begin to ask the questions of how much damage was done and what can we do about it in California. And so there's been quite a bit of information that's been shared about the issue of slavery in California, the fact that we did have slavery in California, that we adhered to to the various laws of runaway slaves in terms of making sure that they were returned. It's back to the individuals that were there. We actually held slaves in California that helped to build the railroad and build California. And so California has quite an extensive history in slavery, despite the fact that it was far away from what we call the Dixie line. But nonetheless, there was quite a history here and a continuation of many of the activities that occurred at the end of slavery itself. So The commission is looking at the economic issues and the damages that were done in terms of people's property being taken, people basically being denied certain kinds of opportunities and access and those kinds of things. And so their biggest challenge, though, is figuring out eligibility. Who would be eligible if California were to engage in any form of reparation that may not be financial? It may be, they're looking at issues like education, educational opportunity, making sure that folks who have been denied admissions to universities and so forth and so on, looking at issues of parity with regards to K-12 education, all those kinds of things that are there, as well as one of the greatest things, which is home ownership and people who had property. There are cases of people who had their property taken from them under supposedly to build an eminent domain that didn't do eminent domain. And some of you may have heard about a beach in Los Angeles where that was taken from a family that had a resort there that LA County never built anything on it, but took the beach, and now the beach has been returned back to that family. That's one of the parts of the struggle in reparations and figuring out all of those things that exist. And so they're in the process of doing that, but the question becomes now is who would be eligible? Who would be eligible for reparations? And in my testimony the other day, the issue was if reparations exist because of damage done as a result of enslavement, then the reparations should be resolved to basically be for those individuals who had ancestry in slavery who currently live in California and have lived in California for a while, not folks who've come from other places, not those who just recently arrived here from Nigeria and Kenya and all those kinds of places, because their parents were not restricted from land ownership, were not restricted by laws and all those kinds of things. And so the focus is on lineage much more than race. So that if folks had a lineage, a history in slavery that had an adverse effect on them, then they would be eligible for reparations, but not just because they were African Americans, or not because and some had suggested that, one person was like, well, what about the Haitians? Well, the Haitians were not in the United States, and they may have had slavery there, but Haiti owes them something, not the United States. And so the focus has been on lineage and not necessarily on race, and the impact of the laws in slavery and what have you had on people's ability to own property, to maintain property, those kinds of things over the years.
So Dr. Webb, we have a really good question here in the chat from Greg Grossner. What is being done to protect election workers and county election officials that are being threatened by what can only be called right-wing terrorists and racists?
Yeah, right. Good. We just, like I said, we had some issues at one of our registrar voter offices. We've had some other attacks that have occurred during the year. I have met with all of our registrar voters and made clear to them that one, I'm not personally going to tolerate the kind of attacks and the verbal attacks that are there. I take those as issues, as a violation of the law, and our Attorney General, and we've decided that we will prosecute them to the maximum extent of the law. We're not going to tolerate people coming in, hollering and screaming at folks and turning things over, as they did the other day, pushing some woman down who fell, and all these kinds of things. We're not going to tolerate it, because once you begin, there's no end to that drama. That's number one. Number two, for those who we are basically working with all of our registrar voters to make sure that there's security within the facilities themselves. We had folks come in who didn't want to wear masks, and that was their big way of getting in and causing ruckus because they weren't going to wear masks. And we have a mask ruling that you have to wear masks. Okay, so that was their entree into being violent, and so we had to deal with that. We're looking at prosecuting those individuals. We are also looking at making sure that those who work in the facilities can engage in something we call Safe at Home, which is a program that the Secretary of State is in charge of for anyone who's actually being who has been stalked or has any kind of domestic violence or issues of that nature. We have a whole program called Safe at Home, where their addresses, their phone numbers, their contact information is not available at all. They're under special security, and those in our registrar voters offices who would like to, or who work the polls, who would like to do that, we will do that. We make sure that, we've had folks do some small things. Some people call them small. I don't call them small, but we have engaged, and we will engage with the FBI and with others concerning those who are there. We also have to push sometimes our sheriff in some of these counties, because many of these counties believe that boys will be boys, and we know what that means, that nobody's going to prosecute anybody for going in acting crazy. well, we will, and the FBI is saying that they will support our efforts in doing that because we don't believe boys should be boys, because we know that that in itself is detrimental. And so we are doing everything we can to protect those workers. I've assured them that I will use the full weight of my office and that of the Attorney General to make sure that they are prosecuted to the maximum extent of the law. I'm not having it. I know it's when it's
Great.
not, it never ends.
Great to hear. So is there anything we in California can do and you can do to protect the sanctity of the vote elsewhere in the country?
Yes, I have been on several different things. I've in conjunction with a lot of the other secretaries of state, I have written editorials and articles across the nation with them. In addition to that, we have our office and our attorneys have helped those attorneys across the nation that are fighting those laws, that are filing appeals against those laws, that are fighting in the Supreme Court. So we have been, we've developed the amicus briefs for all of those kinds of things. I'm available to be in various places throughout the nation to help because, California, fortunately, we don't have the same kind of craziness that everybody else has. But we do know that we have some. But we're in a position because of the fact that we don't have the kind of governor and kind of repressive leadership at the top and anywhere else, and we have the authority and the ability to basically speak out and to be places where others can't be and to stand firm on those issues that we believe are important. So I'm working closely with all of those individuals in Michigan and all around to make sure that I lend my personal support for them. I probably fairly soon will be doing some fundraising activity for the president of the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State, who will be here in a couple of weeks, to help her raise funds to fight those battles across the nation. Because as I tell people, the best way to fight this is not only to fight them at the polls in terms of elections, but also to turn out at the polls to vote in great numbers so that people know that this is not the will of the people and that we won't be intimidated by anything they do.
Okay, great. So I have a very interesting question from Jean Mullally, who's on our board. It has to do with section 5102 of the California Elections Code, which basically says political parties that are involved in overthrowing the government can't be qualified. So shouldn't the Republican Party be disqualified on those grounds?
It's good that you asked me that question because today I got, I don't know how many letters in my office asking me to disqualify Trump from running for president because he violated his oath of office and he's treasonous, and it was a whole bunch of stuff. So interestingly enough, my attorney is working on basically uncovering all of this information to find out what all the things have been said and what have you. We believe probably, and we haven't looked to see very carefully, that those are issues that may be issues for the well, it's horrible to say the Supreme Court, but they may be okay at some point, or either for the commission at the federal level, if we can ever get anything out of our January 6th commission to basically look at. Because when we tried to put restrictions on federal entities, like when we wrote, we required all those who run for president to basically submit their tax statements. Remember that law that we passed? The courts are out because we don't have any jurisdictions so far over federal kind of things. So we can impose it on our governors, but we can't impose it upon the presidential candidates. So we're looking into that again to see if there was something we could do differently that might allow us to do that legally. But it is a question that we're looking at right now in terms of that. If there were actually any kind of ruling in that area that it was legitimately ruled that these folks had done this, then in other words, that they were treasonous, that they had done, tried to overthrow the government and so forth and so on, then we'd have a lot more to do, a lot more standing than simply just saying, oh yeah, they were bad actors, and as a result, they should be treasonous. It could be flipped the other way if we look around and discover it in states where there's a majority Republican in those states. They could then turn around and say, oh, all those Black Lives Matter people are treasonous and therefore should not be allowed to run for office, anybody who believes in Black Lives Matter. So we have to be very careful as you walk down this path of trying to qualify and disqualify individuals, that you have something to stand on that's that you can use. So we looked at it and we're still looking at it. We haven't stopped. It came to my desk today, and I just had a discussion maybe an hour ago with my attorney who had begun the research to determine whether or not these acts of the last president and others were grounds for dismissal from running for office. So we'll see.
Very interesting. Thank you. So I think we have time for one more question here, and I'm going to make it one that my board colleague Chris Pearson asked. When we look at the Trump-inspired candidates running for Secretary of State across the United States, so the people who supported Trump who want to be Secretary of State in other states now, how many of them are there, and are Republicans going to defeat them in the primaries?
Not really sure. We've just had this recent discussion, so I'm not sure who all they are because everyone hasn't filed yet. A number of persons who said they want to run across the state, across the nation, and so we'll be looking at them. As I get the list, I will do my best to try to share it with you because some of you may want to help in their campaigns by doing phone banking and others to keep them from getting in office. But there's quite a few of them, my understanding, and many of the states that were in question, Georgia and Michigan, all have candidates running. Arizona, those all have candidates running who have basically taken the oath to Trump to a certain extent and have decided that they believe that the election was stolen and so forth and so on. So we're going to do our best to put as much information out about it, those candidates that we can, as well as hopefully help in some way by either raising funds or campaigning or phone banking or whatever we can do in California and to help them. And so I'll keep you guys posted on it. But I know the Democrats, Secretary of States, are going to work hard to try to defeat every last one of them.
Well, thank you very much. Anything you'd like to add before we bid you good night?
It's good seeing you guys. I haven't seen many of you in so long. It's great to see you. I still live in San Diego. You guys are still living in 79th. Don't forget me. I just enjoy being with you. But what I will do is try to keep in touch and make sure that, and anytime, don't hesitate to call my office to remind me to do something or be somewhere with you. And I'm going to see as much as I can to get engaged and involved with the work that you're doing here. I've got my own campaign going, and so we'll be, running for the full term as Secretary of State this year. All goes well. We hope to continue to serve you and to be with you anytime you need me. So don't hesitate to let me know. It's great seeing you guys, and you're still the biggest and baddest club in San Diego County. You know that. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Weber. All right, so our next speaker is Nathan Fletcher. He's the chair of the San Diego Board of Supervisors, and as of very recently, he represents us here in La Mesa because of the redistricting one just went through. Now that he has had a chance to familiarize himself with our community, one of the questions I hope he will ask us tonight is where you can get the best burrito in La Mesa, because we like to set him up to make controversial questions that will divide the community. Welcome.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you all. It's just so wonderful to join you all. Dr. Weber hit it. She is fantastic. We love all the work she's doing, but such an incredible Democratic club. And I remember for years coming out to see you all, and I know Tina, all the leadership. At times, people would come up and say, we're going to adopt you as our county supervisor in La Mesa, because when I started running. It was all 5 Republican. And then I'm running and people said, hey, if you win, we're going to adopt you and we're going to call you our own. And that was a great honor of mine, and it meant a lot to me. And I've enjoyed coming back and hearing that. And well, the reality is now you don't have to adopt me anymore. I am yours. I am officially your county supervisor, and it's a wonderful treat and a great honor. And so it's wonderful to join you this evening. And, I just want to take a moment we're always looking forward. And in my office, Team Fletcher, we always focus on what is the challenge ahead of us. We don't do a good job of looking back. When we accomplish and we move and we advance, we're always said, what else? There's got to be more we can do. There's more people that need help. There's more policies that need changing. And all we do is look ahead. But I want to take a moment with all of you to just look back on the very brief time, because it was just not even 4 years ago, 3 years ago, that you had an all 5 Republican Board of Supervisors. And what they did was vote to spend your tax dollars defending Donald Trump's policies against the state of California. And we could go through the litany of all of the things that they did. They had an all-5 Republican board, and they governed as such. They governed as such. And I remember telling you, if we can win the 1 seat in District 4 and we can have D4, I believe we've got an opportunity where we can take the majority on this board. And we got in, and you all helped me, and you helped me in that election, and we won that election. And then we came back and we won 2 more. And when I say we did that, we all did this. Every one of you who walked for a county supervisor candidate, who donated a few dollars, who told people to get out and do it. And so what has that majority meant in the really short time that we've had it, just a little bit over 1 year? It means we've stood with immigrants. We passed structurally to change and create an Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs in the County of San Diego. It means we turned our convention center into a place that migrant children were welcomed into the County of San Diego and were embraced and were pushed forward. It means we recently took action on gun safety, working with all of our incredible groups dedicated to lowering gun violence on a 3-2 partisan vote. We took action to advance our county and move forward. It means our county made clear that we support a woman's right to choose. We support that reproductive right, and we did that in a vote and a statement of values. It's mean time and again, we've stood and voted on the side of our allies in organized labor, fighting for the working class and fighting for basic fairness and dignity when it comes to economic issues and tackling the runaway issues of corporate greed. It means time and again, we have demonstrated with our votes and actions that we embrace our LGBT community, and we will stand as active allies in what we do. Our COVID response has been driven and dominated by science, by public health, and by doing what we needed to do to protect our community and get us in a position to get through this pandemic. Our climate action plan that we're taking on actually having a legally enforceable climate action plan and making clear what the goals, the intentions, the expectations are, our pathway to a carbon neutral, decarbonized economy, all of the things we're doing on air quality and water quality and environmental justice, establishing structurally in county government offices of environmental justice and all of these types of things. Voting rights, which you just heard so much from Dr. Weber about. Our county voted to advance voting rights, to provide more opportunity for people to cast ballots in more effective ways, in more languages, and more efficient ways. On racial justice, we led both expanding the role of our Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, establishing an Office of Equity and Racial Justice, bringing back our Human Relations Commission, investing in mobile crisis response teams to go out there. We've seen historic investments for our county in mental health and drug treatment services and tackling issues of homelessness. Time and again, we have stepped up to advance our beliefs and our progressive values in actual substantive policy. And we've worked to give you all a county you can be proud of and a county that you think represents you. And that's just what we've done in just the last little bit. We have so much more to do. And so as I look ahead, I was so honored to be asked by my colleagues to serve for a second year as chair of the board. That hasn't happened in about 100 years in San Diego County because we know that we have a lot of work left to do. We've got to see our way through the rest of COVID and getting back to normal. And we have to implement and execute and act on all of the things that we've initiated. And we have so much more to do. We're going to support our county workers. We're going to do right by them. We're going to invest in the community and continue to lead. But I wanted to come to you tonight and tell you that the reality is when you have a 3-2 majority by 1 vote, that every election matters and every election is important. And I am up for re-election this year. My district has changed. I lost a lot of areas all the way down the coast. I lost all the coastal voters. I came out, got all of you, and I love you all, and I'm excited. But we can't take this election for granted. There are 2, if not 3 different dark money PACs raising unlimited sums of money that exist exclusively for the purpose of attacking me in this election cycle. And they have recruited a anti-science activist who is not just wrong on everything when it comes to vaccines and COVID, but is wrong on all of the issues that we hold dear, whether we're talking about wrong on a woman's right to choose, wrong on common sense gun reform, wrong on everything that we hold dear. It is a absolute Donald Trump, Ted Cruz person. But they do have a national network, and they've got a group that they tap into and build support. And so I wanted to ask for your help. I need to get out and get introduced to folks in La Mesa, and not just all of you who are active in the club, but your neighbors and your friends, and those who are out there. And so Lauren McDonald on my team is here. She's on the line, and she'll put her email in the chat. And so I just appreciate any help and support you can give us in this election. We're looking for volunteers who can help us as we head into the campaign. We're looking for folks who want to host some house parties and invite all your friends and neighbors out there and say, hey, let us introduce you to our new county supervisor. We're obviously very involved in fundraising. We've got to get in a position to fight back in any amount you might be able to help and support. But, I plan to get out in the campaign and earn it and work hard, walk door to door, talk to voters across our district, tell our story, and make sure that we not only win, but we win convincingly to make sure that we hold our progressive majority so that we can continue to do all of the things that we need to do as we move forward. And, I counted on your support when I wasn't in your district, and hoping we can count on it and really work closely together as we move forward. We have a lot of work left to do. So with that, Mitch, I'd be happy to wrap it up. Happy to take any questions, concerns, thoughts, anything that's on your mind. But just want to thank you all for being such an active and engaged club and group. And Mitch, I don't know the burrito yet, but when you come back in person, I'll come in person, and I'll give you my number one favorite. I won't dodge that. I just got to spend. I haven't been out of La Mesa at lunchtime yet, so I'm going to have to get out a little bit more and check out your burrito.
Okay, thank you very much. So makes a nice transition actually to take a serious note on your statement before. Is where do we stand on COVID at this point? What's your crystal ball, Sam? And we can
from the beginning. Now, y'all know you've been watching this with me from the beginning, and I never predict where it is. I do think it's important to note, and I think that we got to take to heart that it is a fundamentally different situation today than it was a year ago, because we have a vaccine. And everything that we did, very difficult decisions, very hard decisions in the early days of COVID, was designed to really protect and preserve the integrity of our healthcare system. And because San Diegans did so incredibly great at getting vaccinated, we had the first super station, we had community health workers, promotores, going door to door in the language that folks spoke, getting them signed up. We have one of the most successful jurisdictions in the country at our vaccination rates. And that's just an incredible testament to all of the hard work of the healthcare workers, the proactive work of the county in investing and getting out in communities and doing that. But because our vaccine rates are so high, we got through Delta without running out of healthcare capacity. We got through Omicron without running out of healthcare capacity. And so I think there is a little bit of a nature of viruses as they evolve. They tend to become less severe and more contagious. We saw that with Delta. We saw that with Omicron. And so I can't really predict what the future looks like, but I think we're going to be in a good position coming out of this. I think between what we have with fully vaccinated, which includes boosted, plus folks who have gotten it, we're going to have a pretty high level of immunity. And I think as we come out of Omicron, we're going to be able to come out of this really strongly. And I think we're going to get to the point where COVID moves into respiratory viruses, not dissimilar from other respiratory viruses we face, meaning they're out there, we know about them, we plan for them, we prepare for them. We're likely to get increased winter surges, so we need to stockpile testing. That was a real shortage of the recent surge, and get in that mindset. But I think there's going to be a new normal where we accept COVID's here. If you're vaccinated and protected and boosted, then you have a high level of protection. Almost all of the hospitalizations we had, the vast majority of them, were in the unvaccinated. And then we're going to go about, living our lives and getting back focused on some of the other issues we face.
Okay. By the way, we have a comment from Steve on the board that regarding the fire at your home, we're very glad that everyone is okay, and we hope the perpetrators will be held accountable. Really terrible.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I appreciate all the thoughts. So many of you have reached out. It's a really cowardice thing that someone would do. Very traumatic thing for our family, and we just appreciate all the thoughts. And if someone out there thought that we would be bullied or we would back down, that's not what we do.
Yeah,
that's just not what we do. And so we're making sure our family's safe, and we're doing all the appropriate things, but we're going to carry on and continue. And I just appreciate all the thoughts and knowing how many people out there really support us, both myself and my incredible wife, and our whole family. It's been really meaningful, and all we hope is that they catch them.
Agreed. And we are grateful for the opportunity to support you.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have a question from Lori Saldana. She wants to know if the supervisors will support Project Room Key hotel rooms paid for by FEMA and Cal OES to save the lives of unsheltered people. Is that something
we
you would
have
support?
Yeah, no, we have, and we've been utilizing. The challenge has been, what's been really hard on this is there are not a lot of providers. There's a critical shortage of people who are able to step up and partner to help provide services. You can't just put someone in a room and leave them. You've got to be able to provide that wraparound care and services. Every city in San Diego County has the same opportunity to draw down the funding to administer and run those programs. And so as a county, we've run as many of them as we possibly can, both the COVID isolation rooms and the high risk rooms. And we're doing the best we can to get as many providers in to make sure that we can get folks. But across the board, particularly in behavioral health and mental health and addiction treatments, there's a massive shortage of workforce. And it's a problem when we add clinicians into our correctional units. It's a problem when we stand up crisis stabilization. We made a huge investment in mobile crisis response team, and one of the things that was hardest was finding enough workers in this vital field. And it's a challenge kind of across the board in a lot of these areas, in that there's, there is funding and there is a will, but there's not often enough of the services that we need. And so we're going to continue to do everything that we can. We time and again have raised pay and paid more and done more across the board, and so we're gonna do the very best we can to help every community out there that's in need of help and assistance.
Great. So we've had a couple of people here in the chat urging you to support Dave Myers in the sheriff race. Can you talk to that point?
Yeah, no, I'm happy. I like Dave Myers. And I appreciate him. I've worked with Kelly Martinez. I've worked closely. When I came in, I had a number of big, huge fights with the sheriff. We had huge standoffs, very public fights with the sheriff, and I couldn't get any traction on the things that we were trying to do. And it was a very difficult situation. And Kelly Martinez came in as the undersheriff, and she actually moved the needle. She moved the needle on medication for addiction treatment in our jails. She moved the needle on changing the healthcare approach in our jails. And time and again, I saw her to be very effective at implementing the change that we need in order to get it done. And so I've worked closely with her, and I've seen her be very effective. But I think the good news is we have two leading candidates who are both members of the Democratic Party, who both have good values and who both would do a good job as sheriff. And so I respect, folks' disagreement on this and appreciate that. I had a good conversation with Dave the other day at an event we were at. And wish them all the best. But I had to support the person who I had worked closely with and who I had seen be able to get and drive and implement those changes. And if Dave is sheriff, no doubt he'll be able to do much of the same.
Okay. All right. I think that would do it. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Just, I appreciate, I appreciate you all. I appreciate everything that you do. And what you mean to our county, and now what you mean to the 4th Supervisorial District. And just excited to represent La Mesa. And again, could really use your help as we get out and meet folks. I spent some time out in La Mesa. Had a great visit today over in Casa de Oro. We're getting out to Lemon Grove. We're going to really get out to all the new areas that we represent, and am really excited for what is coming and the work that we have ahead of us to do. And again, if you're willing to help us volunteer, be a part, help us introduce us to folks, host a little home party when it becomes safe and people are comfortable, or support us in any way, again, please reach out and contact Lauren. She put all of her information in the chat, and I look forward to seeing you all out there.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. All right. So moving onward, a couple little housekeeping points before we continue with the meeting. As always, we're streaming this meeting on our YouTube channel. So if you have friends or family who can't make it tonight on Zoom, or you experience technical difficulties and have to leave us, you can watch on that YouTube channel. Just search for La Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club on YouTube. If you have anything you need to bring to our attention, or if you notice any technical problem or anybody disrupting the meeting, please message my board colleague, Katie Sigeti, S-I-G-E-T-I. Please don't message me because I'll just ignore you because I'm busy doing this. Next, we're going to hear from our board president, Tina Reinberg, and I'm going to unmute Tina unless she's already unmuted, and we will hear what she has to say. Tina. There you go. I just accidentally muted you again. Okay, I'm going to. All right.
Okay. Hi. I want to talk to you real quick. Gosh, what a wonderful program we've had today, and we still got more. I want to talk to you about Go Team. And those of you who have not ever been a part of Go Team, what the heck is stopping you? We love our candidates. We love all of them, and we want to elect all of them. And the way we do that is through walking neighborhoods. And I am no good to your neighborhood. You're the person that your neighborhood needs because you know that your neighbors. I do my own neighborhood, and you need, if everybody did their own neighborhood, then, we would by far win. The statistics show that when you have talked to somebody, knocked on their door, your neighbor, and you've talked to them about voting, there's a 17% chance, 17% more chance that they will vote. That is an election right there. 17% more people voting. So it is something that I've been doing for years and years, and I'm now the woman in my neighborhood. When I walk down the street with my list of door hangers, they're like, "Oh yeah, you're the lady with the thing. Here, give me the thing and cross me off your list." So they know because I've been doing it for so long. So hopefully you all get to the point where you have relationships like that. I guarantee you, no matter where you are in the county, there are Democrats, and they want to hear from you. They want to know that they are not alone, and they want to know who to vote for. And especially in down ballot races, we really work hard to get everybody on the list who's running for a water board or community board or anything, so that we can start building our bench. If you already have been doing Go Team in the past, then we're going to be starting up again in April and May. And if you have not ever done it before, no judgment, no shame. We will have a training in March. So I will be leading the training. And if you love candidates like we do, and you want to get more candidates elected, this is a great way to do it. Other than being a candidate yourself, this is the best way you can help. And as we know, Democrats govern better than Republicans. So I hope that you will consider that. If you want to go on the county's website, you can find the trainings, or you can contact me. My email is treehugger, TREEHUGGER 1309 @yahoo.com. That's what happens when you let your preteen pick your email address. So I really hope that you all do it. I think you will find it rewarding. It is no more complicated than walking up to a door, knocking on it, and 9 times out of 10 they're not going to answer, but they still appreciate the fact that you left the door hanger. And the conversations you will have will almost universally be very positive. So I would love for all of you guys to get involved and us to have a perfect club with, all of us represented. And also, if you live in an area that is not walkable, if you live on one dirt road, no shoulder, quarter mile to, from one house to another, let us know that, so that we know that we shouldn't give that street to anybody, and we can maybe do mailers to them or phone calls. My email one more time is treehugger, TREEHUGGER 1309 @yahoo.com. So anyway, please consider joining the Go Team. It's maybe one afternoon out of your life, and it could really change the course of the election. Every elected candidate will tell you that we make a difference. So thanks.
Yeah, just three additional points on that. One, once again, listening to the Ezra Klein show this afternoon, he was making the point yet again that, elections are won locally. We all watch the national news. We all care about what's going on in Washington, but elections are won locally, and here is where we can make a difference. So work for the candidates here. Second point is, again, reading the national news. Walking and knocking doors like Goteen is like the most effective thing you can do. It's just amazing in this era of big money and technology. It's still lacing up your shoes and talking to neighbors. Third thing is, I've done it myself, you will very, very rarely have a negative experience. And when you do, you'll get a good story out of it. One of our walkers was chased by ghosts twice in one day. And
That was
Akilah
Weber.
Yes, now she's in the state assembly. So
Yes.
way to advance. All right. Thank you very much. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, we're working on our program for next month. It's going to be on reproductive justice, and we will let you know more when we know more.
Okay, great. So thank you, Tina. Our next speaker is going to be Sharon Cox, also my board colleague, who's got some important things that we need you to know about. So Sharon, take it.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Quick update again regarding the Cottonwood sand mine that we are working very, very hard to make it go away forever. Last night, the Valadero Planning Group met, and on their agenda was the Cottonwood sand mine. Thank you, Jay. And they, after over 100 people attended, many people spoke, many people just put in the chat their comments, which were recorded and added to the record. The Valadero unanimously said that they object to the project and would oppose it. They are sending that letter to the county. The Spring Valley Planning Group, thank you, Chris, also did the same thing, although that's not technically in their jurisdiction. Every little bit helps. On January 19th, the county did have a virtual meeting. If you remember correctly, they canceled the only live meeting that we were going to have. The virtual meeting that they had on January 19th was attended by over 300 people. It went till after 11 p.m. with people speaking against that project. What is important now is that by February 28th, the county kind of closes the window on public comment. I need everybody to write a letter to the county. In the chat, I've got the Robert Hintingen's information. You can make it simple, you can make it elaborate. On our website, stopcottonwoodsandmine.org. We have sample letters. We've got the letter from Valadero. We've got the letter from the Spring Valley planning groups as well. So you can kind of pick information from that. What we need to say is that the draft environmental impact report is flawed. It is not correct. The things that the county is saying are mitigatable by the developer is not true. Their facts are not correct. The county so far is saying that over all of the issues that could potentially be disastrous to our community regarding that sand mine, the only thing that they see is an issue is the aesthetics that it will ruin for the neighbors. Not the water, not the building a sand mine in the middle of the Sweetwater River, possibly polluting the water source to Otay and all the users of that down to the south. Talk about racial justice. We could potentially pollute all the water to our south. So please, please, please write letters. Go to our website, stopcottonwoodsandmine.org. We've got big, huge yard signs, big stop signs. If you'd like one that will be delivered to your house, you can put it up. They're showing up all over the place. So it's time to do this before February 28th at 4 p.m. Thank you again. We're still fighting. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Could you put that information in chat again, please?
Yeah, it's at the
Scroll
very
up.
top. It was the first chat listed. So scroll all the way up.
Okay, great. All right. So next up, we have our panel on racial justice. Brenda Miller, my colleague on the board, is going to moderate that. So I'm going to mute myself and learn some things here. Welcome, Brenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you all for joining us on this social justice, race equity that is a systematic and widespread problem in society. And I'm glad to have the panelists join us tonight, Katie Leyes, Kenya Taylor, and Sean Harris. Thank you for being here tonight. We look at this social issue. We're going to look at this social issue tonight, and this is the forum that we're going to have this dialogue. I'm Dr. Brenda Meller. I started my nursing career over 40 years ago. I completed my terminal degree in 2019, a lifelong learner from the University of San Diego. I'm currently a full-time lecturer at Cal State San Marco and an administrative hospital supervisor at Palomar Medical Center. I am active in the community, working with nonprofit organizations such as the Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club. I serve on the various committees that relates to COVID. I'm active on with BAPAC as the health director and Now Sisters as a registered program director. Social justice, race equity is a painful topic that keeps surfacing. Race is historically constructed that places a group of people in either a lower level or higher level belief. Higher level people feel entitled or define who is not entitled based on their skin color or physical features. A little history is in 1607, the Virginia settlers wanted to turn tobacco crops into cash. The work was not easy and required people to harvest the tobacco crops. They looked to mirror a pattern of enslavement with native people, but that was met with resistance. They turned to indentured contractors, British laborers, but that was not sustainable. Then they turned to enslaved Africans, enslavement, because slavery was for life. Africans were not considered humans. They did not have to have a contract. It was a belief that non-whites were devoid of any history, and slave laws were enacted codifying hereditary slavery. They went on to justify slavery because of the evolution and differences between the race, such as physical features, behaviors, and legal right. Expansions of slavery was the norm. As we move from the historical lens, where does that leave us today? The recent wave of citizen-led uprising in support of the global Black Lives Matter movement has again exposed the systemic racism in our society. There is a national network of government working to achieve a racial equity and advance opportunities for all, called the Government Alliance of Race and Equity. Tonight will give us an opportunity to pause and reflect on social justice and to ask the questions, the results of which could continue to create a path towards a more just society called wokeness. Again, I'd like to welcome the panelists. Thank you for attending. I believe you can unmute yourself. And I wish each of you to tell me a little bit about yourself and your overall assessment of the state of social justice and race equity today at the local, the county, and the state and government level. You can hit one of the areas, local or county or state or government. You don't have to address them all. How about if we have Katie Lattice, introduce yourself and give us a little bit of the background about yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm happy to be with you guys tonight. My name is Dr. Katie Leyes. I am currently working to train our future mental health workers at the University of San Diego in the Hahn School of Nursing. And my career has, as a nurse practitioner, has been primarily working in federally qualified health centers with refugees and people who with Medi-Cal or the uninsured. And I thought this this question's very provoking. I've been thinking about it a lot this week in preparation for this discussion. And, you know, from what I've seen in the evidence, is that I guess the evidence is not quite there that we've made a lot of progress when it comes to our state and our community and our nation. I think where we've gotten to at this point is we're becoming more aware, and we're realizing that we need to do more education on implicit bias, on educating our youth about these topics, so that hopefully as time progresses, we can have a more just society. But we've all seen that there's a lot lacking, and there's a lot of people suffering in our community. And I think that we're also dealing with the effects of years and years of racism and oppression. And we're seeing the effect that that's having on people's health. These traumatic experiences that people have been through are really affecting people's health and well-being. We're seeing more disease, more mental health conditions, more cancer. And so we're doing a lot better at trying to identify these things and meet people where they're at. But I see that we have a long way to go still.
Thank you, Katie. Kenya, would you please introduce yourself, and would you like me to ask that question again?
I have the question. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. And thank you so much, Tina and Mitch and the board, for allowing me to be here. My name's Kenya Taylor. I'm a resident of Rancho San Diego, one part of the new area that's moved to District 4. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have a certification in primary care behavioral health, geriatric mental health. In addition, I was just contacted by the County of San Diego about 2 weeks ago, asking me to continue to be one of the co-chairs for the behavioral health work group in the East Live Well team. I'm also a mother of 2 Black sons, twin sons that are 25 years old. I know what it's like to be a mom who goes to the hospital 3 times saying, I'm in labor, and they turn me away. A lot of stuff I talk about are things I've experienced myself. Today, there's a lot of women who go into childbirth. Some don't come out, or babies are having major problems because of discrimination, racism. It's real. Now, again, my twins are 25 years old, born in 1996. I went to the hospital 3 times. The last time I went, they kept me. I woke up and was fully dilated and had twins that were pound 8 and a pound 10. I was told they would either die, have mental retardation, cerebral palsy, die, or I would need to disconnect them from the machines. None of that happened. I am a woman of faith, and my kids have never been rehospitalized. They've never had the flu even. But I mention this because we're in the year 2022, and we're still seeing women of color of all demographics who have problems in childbirth. We're still told that Black women can experience more pain than others. We know that there was slavery in this country. I believe slavery has evolved. We have the criminal justice system. We have our prisons. We have our homelessness. When you look at the numbers don't always reflect, or the data doesn't always reflect what's going on. And I'll tell you why. I mentioned the Live Well team in the East, and I would ask questions about the sweeps of the tents and discarding the belongings of our homeless community members right before they collected data. And when you do that, of course, the numbers are going to be lower because you've thrown away people's property. Unfortunately, we're not always told the truth. Now, I love East County. I love La Mesa. I've done a lot of work here. My kids went to school in the area. However, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Our kids are suffering more than ever. Distance learning isn't working. I have a mental health background. Suicide is a question that comes up to me every single day from my clients and community members too. Suicide attempts are on the rise. There's a lot of people in the country that are doing well. There's more that aren't. I'm happy we're having this discussion here tonight so we could have an open and honest dialogue with what La Mesa, Foothills, our surrounding community members and allies could do to strengthen things. Because even though I'm talking about race, we haven't even talked about the supports and access that are needed for our seniors and veterans. We all matter. We're all in this together. And I hope we could all live well here in San Diego. But thank you again, Brenda, for your time. And I look forward to answering questions.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Shane Harris, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. And it's an honor and privilege to speak here with the La Mesa Foothills Democratic Club. You all have done tremendous work. It's known around the county. And I'm just a big fan of this club because it is one of the most progressive, but also one of the most balanced and focused clubs when it comes to layout of policy and implementation and strategy. And I just really commend you, Mitch, and everyone who's here and doing the good work. And welcome to District 4 in the county. I happen to be a resident of District 4. I live in Bankers Hill. And I've been a resident of District 4, probably you could say since I was a kid. As a kid who grew up, many of you know my story, but I think from a very broad viewpoint, probably from the news and from the publicity. But, you know, the reality is this. I know this county well. I know the struggle, the plight of a Black child who was born into a biracial family. My mom was white. My dad was African American. I was born at Mercy Hospital here in San Diego and have a very unique lens and perspective to what I experienced. When I was 8 years old, I lost my father, cancer of the liver. When I was 16, I lost my mother to a drug overdose. And throughout that whole period of time, I spent 13 years in the foster care system total, going through 8 different placements. And one thing that I saw significantly real and consistent was the plight and the challenge that it was to be a child of color, be an African American kid, going through the experiences that I was having on the streets of Southeast San Diego and on the streets of across our county. I mean, I was moved on a consistent level everywhere from Vista to Chula Vista. And, you know, having lived everywhere in this county and experiencing the inequity of the foster care system and the inequity really in the urban inner city, I have a unique lens that I have formed much of my advocacy and my professional work around. On the professional side, I am an ordained minister. Many of you may not know that. I was ordained at 21 years old, and at that time, the Union Tribune and the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint deemed that I was the youngest pastor ordained in San Diego. I don't know if that's quite true, but that was what they said. When I was 22, I was recruited on a national level and got the chance to work for Reverend Al Sharpton in the National Action Network, organizing around the country and establishing a national database of relationships and connections that I had got to establish. But far before that, I was doing work on social justice that brought national civil rights leaders like Reverend Al and many, many others to reach out to me. And I think the unique thing that I have and that I have held for so long is the reality that I saw what it was, right, to face the inequity of the foster care system. And I saw what it was to face inequity, period, as a Black child growing up in the situation that I grew up in. And I always promised God that if I ever got to a platform, that I would be a voice for the voiceless, that I would ensure that other people were heard, and specifically those who are not heard on a regular basis. So I've shaped my life's work and my life commitment to that message and to that mission. Over the last few years, I organized and launched a national civil rights organization. It's called the People's Association of Justice Advocates, focused on keeping Dr. Martin Luther King's dream alive by taking direct action for all with a balanced standard of justice, no matter what race, gender, criminal record, sexuality, and citizenship. And our organization and agency has been focused on very critical issues, some popular and some not. Obviously, the conversation around reimagining policing is an imperative one. We're doing a lot of policy work around that, and specifically addressing criminal justice reform. You know, we've talked about the jail deaths, and I believe some reports from the audit are coming out on the state level tomorrow. We're going to see what that looks like. But there's still so much work to do. We're dealing with homelessness. We've talked about the challenges pertaining to 19% of San Diego's homeless population are African American. I believe 20% now. And we have a lot of work to do when it comes to ensuring that, you know, people are humanized, that people are treated right. We can clean up our streets and treat people like humans. And you see the inequity there. We're focused on the fact that over 20% of the 2,500 foster kids in our system are African American children in our county. And, you know, we have a unique focus, and this Board of Supervisors are the parents to the foster kids in our system, and they owe a responsibility to these kids. That is part of the work of social services at the county level. But when you look countywide, statewide, and nationally, you see the imperative focuses that rest when it comes to voting rights. You see in the South states that are trying to block and hinder Black voices and BIPOC voices from being heard at the polls. And it's very clear that the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which has still not been passed by the Senate, and is still not being taken up through the House because of Republicans who are trying to block those opportunities, because they know that Black voters make it to the polls, and we have always activated our voice at every level. So when you look at 1964 and 1965, we got some very commendable things, right? The Voting Rights and the Civil Rights Act were very commendable and very important. We've gotten the African-American president elected. But when you look at George Floyd, who was killed in 2020, and I was there in Minneapolis with the family of George Floyd at that time, it's very clear, right, that we have a lot of work to do to follow up on the promises we've made to diversity, equity, inclusion, to follow up on the promises of our past and our history as a country. And we're still dealing with the overarching issues facing the inequity. George Floyd was felled far before George Floyd was killed. And I've been saying that everywhere I go in the country and everywhere I speak, because it's a reality. George Floyd was felled when he was a child. George Floyd was felled in his teen years. He was felled in his early adult years. And why? Because you see the inequity across our communities. It's poor. We have so many people that are poor. We have so many people that don't have access. We have so many people that have been treated less than human. And we have a lot of work to do to ensure that we follow up to that mission and to that message of Dr. King, that we follow up to that dream that was talked about by ensuring that we create equity in our communities. So it was an honor to hear Dr. Shirley Weber as the only elected tonight who acknowledged Black History Month and the overarching issues facing African Americans today. But it is very clear that we've got to do the work to ensure that every voice is heard. And what that means is we have to speak up, we have to be vocal, we have to be loud, and we have to ultimately get to the table to have the important conversations with people we agree with and people we don't. I've been a big fan of reaching across the aisle. There are people who disagree with me on that. But I will reach across the aisle and I will reach to anyone who's willing to deliver and commit to the promise of ensuring that African Americans who have been so far and so long left behind get a voice at the table. You look at the status, and this is my closing portion of this, you look at the status of reparations. African Americans, why are we studying reparations? We're studying reparations, just barely studying reparations. African Americans are still among the very few who have not been paid back for the debt that this country owes. And I think that that's a critical need. We need to ensure that in some way, shape, or form, that African Americans get some way of payback for what they faced in this country, my ancestors. And so I feel that there's a critical message and a critical importance to tonight's gathering, and I look forward to having this discussion with you all, because it's going to take all of us, white, Black, Asian, Latino. We must lift up the table, and if the table comes together, we can get a lot done. But we got to have hard conversations. We got to be truth tellers. We got to come to the facts. We got to look at the data, and we got to really get to the core of these issues. When you look at federal reports, you see with the EOC and among many other federal reports that African Americans are still unemployed at disproportionate rates. We have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you. I'm going to try to keep the momentum going forward, because I would like to just recircle back and talk a bit more about the jail deaths, and Katie and Kenya, you've got that mental health background. I see a lot of young people in the hospital with mental health disease, and I call it a disease. But now you're seeing the deaths. Is the deaths at the jails? Is it due to mental health? Is it due to the long-term abuse of drugs? Is it, a high percentage of people of color? What does that look like? Can you elaborate on that, Katie?
I think that when it comes to our jail system, I've been to Las Colinas in Sanctity, which I've, and I've met some of the mental health workers at those locations, and they're amazing clinicians. I think where the problem ends up happening for a lot of the people suffering from mental health conditions in the jail system is that there's no follow through when they leave. There are people contracted to provide those services when they leave, but you have to have social workers and case management and people to make sure there's like a connection when they move on to the next step. In addition to the fact that a lot of the people who do end up in our jail system, it's due to a lot of other complicated factors, right, that make it really difficult to continue your mental health journey once you leave a jail. There's a lot of problems when it comes to our social determinants of health, right? So if we can't meet our basic needs with housing, with food, with a safe place to live, it becomes very difficult to focus on taking a medication every day or coming to see your therapist or the things that help us to maybe deal with that addiction, and face that in a way where we're not just in survival mode. So I think there are elements there that to provide good healthcare. I think more funding is needed for a lot of those services to be better. And then I think so that they can actually hire the people that they need to provide care for people and treat people with dignity.
Thank you very much, Katie. Kenya, would you kind of elaborate, why is this happening? Why are they dying in police custody? Why is that increasing?
There's a lot of incompetence that's happening. Number one, mental health is still not respected as it should be. Also, we have a number of people who are incarcerated who didn't have mental health problems before they got there. Now, when I ran for County Board of Supervisors in District 2, and thank you so much, La Mesa, for our 45,037 votes too, okay? But I mention this because when I ran for office, I was working in a reentry program where people were discharged from being incarcerated. Some were on parole, some were on probation. We were working with the probation officers. Obviously, there was documentation that needed to go to to the judges. There's not a coordination of care. One of the biggest problems is we are not doing a great job with the various systems that exist. For example, the collaboration of cross-functional and multidisciplinary teams. When people are discharged with mental health or incarcerated because of healthcare issues, I mentioned I have a background in primary care behavioral health. I've done this for years. If a person is given medication for the first time, people need to be monitored. People need to have someone that they could trust to talk to about what it means to have COVID, for example, what it means to wear a mask. Now, when you think about what's going on in our county now, where people don't even want to wear a mask or get mad when they wear a mask, can you imagine being confined to a little space in a prison or jail cell? There's a lot of trauma that goes on in prisons. A lot of people don't care about the people who are in prison. And the reason I say that, because I know the attitudes of the people I've talked to. And don't get me wrong, some of my loved ones' biggest supports are in law enforcement and corrections. Some of my closest friends work for police departments, various law enforcement agencies. But the biggest concern I have is people aren't trying to invest in solutions that work. If that doesn't happen, we're not going to get people who are healthier. As the doctor mentioned before me, when we're not coordinating care and people are discharged, you can't expect someone to follow through on a medication regimen when someone tells them when to take a medication. A lot of people leave and they're homeless. Or some people will self-medicate because not everybody who's in jail has a safe place to store their medication. Some are there without family. Some have been shipped from other places in the country here, and their medical records aren't accurate. There's a lack of coordination of care. Also, when you have people who are working, such as our first responders, our medical staff, and they're sick and they're ill and they're getting COVID and they don't have masks, they don't have N95s, they are sick, they're going to work, their families are sick. This whole process hasn't been thought out completely.
It sounds like there's a lot of work that that's needed.
You know, there's a lot of great
disease.
There's a lot of great things that have been happening to get the discussion going. Like now, we're able to go into the stores and get N95s. It wasn't always something that was accessible. But when you have teams, medical teams in a jail who are scared because they don't have the protective gear that they need to treat someone, I mean, is it realistic to think they're going to go above and beyond when they're trying to be safe and go home to their families? This isn't talked about.
I want to continue that from the policy framework. Shane, thank you, Kenya. But I'd like to from a policy framework. How would that look, Shane, in addressing not only mental health, but the healthcare gaps, the disparity, housing policies? What would a policy look like to address these issues?
Well, Dr. Miller, one of the things that I'm a really big fan of is data. I believe we have to collect, analyze data so that we can create robust policy and ensure that we're following the numbers and the humanity of the situation. I think one of the really unique things about this, I would just add on to what Kenya Taylor as well as Katie, the other panelists have shared, I don't need to reinsert what they've already said, is that it's very clear. My office is requesting literally in the coming days, we're going to be announcing a letter coming from my office to the County Law Enforcement Review Board. Many of you may know this is the review board that oversees our county sheriff's department when it comes to policy and data, and makes recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And one of the things about this is then even with a majority Democratic Board of Supervisors, we have not seen any real push for CLRB to collect racial data pertaining to the deaths that are happening. And I think that this data is really important, that we get a breakdown of what the racial breakdown is of deaths in the jails. When it comes to CLRB, CLRB should be collecting that data, and they can do that. But I think it's very clear, Dr. Miller, that there's just not enough data because everything has been so closed. With the current sheriff has kept a lot of things private, a lot of data private, and we've had a bureaucratic system at the county level that has only protected that privacy. And I think that we have to bring that out, air out that data so that we can look at it, gather it, collect it, and really analyze what policy changes need to come. But I think it's starting with good data collection. I also would add to that we don't have a real strong data on how many who exit our county jails in San Diego County end up homeless. And we need to look at what does the rehabilitation effort really look like? Because if we're rehabilitating people, then they should be curved not into homelessness, but into opportunity and possibility. People made mistakes, but those mistakes should not be death sentences or whatnot. We've got to really, really clean up our jails, but it's very clear we've got to gather stronger data, and we've got to make that data transparent. And that's why we need a real strong change at the county level, at the sheriff's level, to ensure that someone who is going to bring that. And I have endorsed Dave Myers, who's running for county sheriff, because I believe that he'll do that. But we need our Board of Supervisors to request that the CLRB, the County Law Enforcement Review Board, would ensure that this data is collected so we can get the racial breakdown. And I think at the county level, the sheriff's level, we need to also know how many who exit our jails end up homeless. And so we're looking into that data collection with the San Diego County Regional Task Force on San Diego Regional Task Force on the Homeless, as well as the Sheriff's Department, who we have already requested that from. But this is going to be, I think, more of a long-standing longitudinal study that will allow us some time to really look at this on a policy level and what needs to be done.
So it doesn't help when the material is not being transparent.
If I may add something to what Reverend Harris said, one of the things I noticed when I worked in reentry was that as the lead of the team, people were discharged and we had housing navigators. It was a title throughout the county that still, the name changes a little bit, but navigation is in the title some way for a lot of people. But I kept asking questions. How come we have housing navigators, but we don't have a place to navigate them to? So we're paying for the navigators. And I appreciate having staff for support, but even though we have funding, shouldn't we have funding for homes or housing instead of sending people to a navigator to talk to about housing and they leave empty-handed? And another problem that happens sometimes if you have substance abuse or substance use, you could get housing, but if you don't, they'll say you're not severe enough. And I think we need more prevention and early intervention so it doesn't take for a person to use substances and then have more access. It saves more money when we could do things early versus when things get more complicated.
Thank you. Any additional comments, Katie? Thoughts on this before we pivot to another topic?
Definitely. As Ms. Taylor was talking, it brought to mind when I have worked here in our East County community, one of the most difficult things to help people with is housing. You know, we have case managers and people that, you know, can do a lot for people. There's a lot of services available out there, but housing is always the most difficult one. And it's, you know, and there's this huge need, right? So I don't know that there are any simple answers to that here in San Diego, but it's definitely seen in a lot of arenas.
Well, I have to add, when it comes to housing, they want the emergency room nurses to be able to identify victim of trafficking. And the problem, if we identify them, the problem that we have is that if we separate the John from the individual that came in the emergency room, and if they cry out for help, we don't have any place to put them. There isn't, if there is housing out there, but the housing is very limited. And so they could cry out, but we don't have any place to put them. And it's really a sad situation. I'd like to just turn right now and talk with you, Sean and Shane, I'm sorry. You know, right now, you know, since, first of all, you know, from the death of Emmett Till in the 1954, justice wasn't served for many, many years for his death. And since the death of George Floyd and Aubrey, and the spotlight has been placed on the social injustice. Police officers are you know, have been convicted. You know, those social Southern vigilantes, they were convicted. Does it sound like social injustice is increasing, as evidenced by these neo-Nazis that were hanging out this past weekend, the rise in hate speech, the Nathan Fletcher's house being burned, and also another person? What do you find is increasing, this social injustice, and what can we do about it?
Well, I think, Dr. Miller, pertaining to African Americans in this country, I don't know about some of the other subjects you mentioned, but I think pertaining to African Americans in this country, it's very clear that there has been a heightened, and I think not just pertaining to African Americans, but to the democracy of our country, there has been a heightened sense of pushback and maybe even so some serious sort of what I would consider criminal behavior that has taken place by those who feel that they are rejects in the country, and essentially those who feel like they're losing power. And it is very clear when you look at the racial injustices that are taking place that there's still so much work to do. You mentioned Emmett Till. There's so many African Americans and BIPOC folks out there who have gone missing. We don't have real, you know, high bids or awards that are offered for these people of color who are missing. But then when you look at, you know, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021, there was a lot of discussion and negotiation. I was in those meetings with Senator Cory Booker and Senator Tim Scott. I had the chance to look at the bipartisan effect of what was supposedly happening. But when it came down to it, our civil rights groups were told that there was essentially no path forward for that policy, for that George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to be passed. But there was a lot of discussion from Democrats, from Republicans, but specifically Democrats, who even campaigned on the fact that George Floyd should not have been killed, that there needs to be federal policy that would have, you know, done a number of things. That federal bill would have essentially, you know, ended the use of force in multiple ways, ending the use of the chokehold, would have really put forth a different perspective to qualified immunity, making police departments have to pay out for, you know, unjust police shootings or police killings that happen. That federal bill would have done a number of things. And I think that when you look at federally on so many levels, locally, statewide, and federally, we have so much work to do to ensure that there is robust policy that protects citizens and specifically protects those who have been disproportionately affected by police shootings, by killings, and by, a lot of this. But I think ultimately, to your question, yes, there's a lot of neo-Nazi, there's a lot of anti-country folks who are just very angry, very concerned that they're losing power. And specifically, if I can say this, I know I have a lot of great white friends, but there's a lot of these folks who feel like they're losing, literally, losing the country because so many people of color. I mean, the ratio of people of color is growing greatly in this country. And folks can either see that as a plus or as a minus. As a biracial kid who grew up in this county and has seen, has seen all sides of the table, it's very clear to me that we have a unique opportunity. We have an expansion opportunity as a country to have more people of color in this country. And so some don't see that as a privilege or as an honor. Some people see that as a negative. And I think that's ultimately the effect we're looking at with the hate and the continued racism and bigotry that is happening in this country. It's coming from those who feel like they're losing the grasp of the country and losing power.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Katie, same question to you. Do you find that social injustice is increasing as the rhetoric of negativity, naysayers are increasing? It's like they've been given this privilege to be outspoken.
Yeah, I think for a lot of that, right, is social media, because you don't have to have the media or some sort of like major platform anymore to have your voice out there. And people who have these common viewpoints are then kind of like pushing each other to be more vocal about these viewpoints. And I think we're definitely seeing a lot of people doing many things out of fear and fear of change, and obviously explicit racist views. So I definitely think that we are seeing a huge uptick in those types of things in our country, and we're all seeing it because it ends up in the news when not enough, but when these really awful things are happening to people in our community, it ends up in the news, and then we see it, and then we start to notice it within our own backyard. So it really, I don't know where we go from here, right? But I think that's why we have to invest in the next generation, the youth coming up, because I don't think any of us want to see the reality of what the future looks like when our kids are our age.
Well, that takes us right into one of my last questions that I was going to ask, and I'll go to
Dr. Miller. Can
Yes.
I just add really an important
Sure.
point that I think we really need to recognize? Right now, there are over a dozen HBCUs who are under bomb threats. I mean, literally, this is being reported. So what we're seeing across the country, and not just in the South, not just on the East, but here in San Diego. I mean, there are people who feel that they're losing the grasp of the country, and they're losing power, and they're afraid of the possibilities, afraid of the hope. The day after Barack Obama was elected, people began meeting on Capitol Hill trying to figure out how they could make him a one-term president, because they just could not stand the fact that a black man could actually obtain the president of the United States, could become the president of the United States. There is a great fear when it comes to, if this person gets in, then that means I lose my power. And it might not even mean that. It might mean that there's an opportunity, that there's possibility. And I think that we need to preach of that possibility. We need to speak of that hope. We need to bring that message of hope back to the core of this country so we can see all of what we can do together rather than what we can do apart.
Thank you so much. And that's part, both of you kind of addressed my last question as far as what is your vision for our direction and addressing social issues. You touched upon it, Shane and Katie, but I'd like to go ahead and push that out to Kenya, and then we'll let you, both of you, wrap that up. We'll circle back around to both you and Katie and Shane. So Kenya, what do you see the vision of social justice in our future, and where we're going with it, be it education, be it, because education, we've got the critical race theory, that's a problem. They're removing books from library that has anything that remotely has a conversation of LGBTQ. There was a book, To Kill a Mockingbird, that they had removed. So it seems like it's just kind of a snowball effect of it's be it my child is being offended by it, or if you talk about this topic, you're going to bring up the history that we don't want to hear about, that we've buried. Where do we go from here?
I think we need to start telling the truth, and we'll be okay. As simple as that is. Tell the truth.
But some people don't want to. Some people don't want to.
That's true.
So what do we do?
What we have to do is keep doing what we're doing. We're doing an excellent job out in the Mesa, mobilizing, getting people more engaged than ever. The problem is, if the policy isn't changing with it, where do we go from here? And that's where we need to strategically plan, because what we do in the city limits of La Mesa might be a little bit different than what we do in Mount Helix area. What might be a little bit different than what happens down the street in Casa de Oro, and I'm in Rancho San Diego, the unincorporated part of town. We can't have the same plans for everybody. We need more inclusion. With the last question, where do we go from here? We need to increase promoting our message with everyone. We have different needs based on generational needs. One of my biggest topics that I talk about very often are economics. People want to be able to build generational wealth. Everybody we talk to is not poor on welfare, on Medi-Cal, getting freebies. There are so many seniors in our community that want to have services, but they make too much, and they're trying to figure out, do they lose their home or go in board and care somewhere? We shouldn't have to make those choices. The Democratic Party needs policies that impact everyone at different income levels. We also need to have those students that graduate in our backyard at San Diego State or UCSD or USD that could purchase a home here. The founders of this country knew the importance of land ownership, right? Now, yes, I believe in reparations, and giving people free education, that's great. But at the same time, people need a place to live. When people don't have a place to live, they sometimes start using drugs at night so nobody violates them, or people don't take their belongings. We need to talk about the root causes of the issues to change policies so we could have solutions for success, so people could build generational wealth. People want to be independent. People want to thrive in their family. With our Live Well programs in the county, we talk about health, safety, and thriving. Right now, we're in a pandemic. Most of us didn't think we'd be in a pandemic. There's always someone that says, oh, I knew. But most of us did not say that. We need to make sure we have clean air, clean land. We need to make sure we're not prone to these fires. There was a discussion last night regarding the sand mine. I live in the Cottonwood community. That pollution, potential pollution, because it's still under investigation. But some will say that could trickle down to La Mesa too. Many of you saw what just happened in Colorado with the fires. We need prevention. We need to invest in our communities. We need to invest in our roads, our infrastructure. It's important that we have safe streets so our seniors who are trying to get out, be mobile, don't fall as they're trying to get exercise and decrease their isolation. There's simple solutions that we could do with prevention, but it's important for our leaders that are creating policies to not only create policies, but allocate funding to address the needs of our specific communities.
That's so true. And that's a lot of the problem is allocating money appropriately. And it was nice hearing Nathan Fletcher talk about those 5 Republicans and what they were not doing to help, not even the average person, but certainly somebody of color to to get out of their situation and help improve it.
Let me also, if I may say, I'm a business owner. I work for a company as well. But one of the biggest problems that I see, people are afraid to talk, because if you talk, you may lose your funding. We need those people who aren't at the table with people getting funded. My mom used to say, don't bite the hand that feeds you, right? We need those people that can have a voice to speak up. I'm not insinuating I want anybody to lose funding for anything, but we need to ask people empowered those bold questions, because nobody else should suffer. Nobody should have to wait for an ambulance for several minutes when a spouse could be having a heart attack. We need interventions now. We need prevention and early intervention. It saves lives. And we could have these great discussions in our clubs, but I'll tell you, when we're knocking on doors or phone banking and talk to the community, they're worried about childcare. They're not worried about a lot of these topics we're talking about in these meetings. Right. And so it's important for us to be more proactive.
That goes back to what Katie had said about social determinant of healthcare. They're in that situation and they don't see a way out. But let me just pivot over to Katie to get her last, her vision of what does social justice look like down the road, and how can we continue to address the social issue problems.
Well, I will say, social determinants of health is something that has been a discussion in research, but it's only been probably in the last few years that healthcare facilities have started to screen for that and started to try to meet people and help them to get connected with those types of resources. One of the problems is that often when people are in that kind of situation, right, there's going to be anxiety, there's going to be depression. And the way that affects a person is that you're not able to problem solve through things like you would be normally. So, we had grant funding for people to, help to connect people with resources. However, that was very limited. There were only the sickest of the sick were able to get access to that because it was so limited. So I think that if we really want to get people connected to these services and help them to change the trajectory of their life, we need to have more funding so that we can have more people in positions like that to work with people one-on-one to solve these issues that are happening in their life. And I think on top of that, there's, even if someone feels called to work with people of color or underserved populations, we all have our implicit bias, and that negatively affects the healthcare outcomes of the people we serve. And so that's a problem. We need to, as organizations, help our healthcare providers, medical assistants, all of these, everyone, to start identifying these biases that we have so that we can do better for the people that we serve. And I think I think though those things will go a long way into getting us into a better future than where we are now.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Shane, we'll wrap up with you and your vision, the social justice issue, and where are we going with this?
Well, thank you to these wonderful panelists who I've had the chance to have dialogue with tonight, Katie and Kenya Taylor. Look, I think we have a unique opportunity as a country to bring back and establish the hope that we once talked about. We've got to make a turn here. We've got to stop talking about Trump. We've got to stop talking about the cynicism, the hate, the bigotry, and we've got to focus on the hope, the faith, the opportunities that are presented to us. It's not really my vision, but it's our vision.
Mhm.
The country that talked about in our Constitution how we are creating a more perfect union. And I believe we do that in a few ways. One, it's very clear that the conversation, bringing conversation back is really key. There was a time where Democrats and Republicans had conversations.
Mhm.
There was a time where we had disagreements without being disagreeable. We need to bring back the fabric of conversation because we all have different opinions. That's the beauty of the humanity that was created by God in the universe. That was the beauty of the humanity that we have. We all have different opinions, but we can come to the table and talk about it. And we may walk away disagreeing, but it's okay because we're humans and we have the right to have a different opinion. As long as it's rooted in love and grace, as long as it's rooted in opportunity to find common ground, where do we work together at? I think that's got to be a key focus, rebuilding the fabric of civility in America. Two, I think it's very clear that we need communal economic growth. We need to bring dollars back home. Economics start local, just like politics. We've got to circulate the dollar in the Black community. We've got to circulate the dollar in the inner city. We've got to circulate the dollar among our small businesses. And that dollar is important because it establishes and offers a community the opportunity to have a different conversation with their elected officials. Because now I'm sending you down there to do something different. I'm a small business owner. Recently, over the last 2 years, I've opened up my own communications firm, S. Harris Communications. And I just gave my first check to an elected official. And I was able to say to them, I need you to go down there and govern. I need you to do what I'm sending you there to do. Felt really good. And I think one of the things that our community, specifically in the Black community and in BIPOC communities, they have not been able to have that conversation with our electeds because there's a stronghold of dollars. And everyone who sends them up there, they're sending them up there to do and govern for them. And I think that essentially we have to build back that communal economic growth. We have to establish the dollar and exchange the dollar in our communities. And I think thirdly, it's very clear policy has to be a key focus. When the Office of Equity and Racial Justice board letter came forth in our county, I argued it and created another one that ultimately ended up winning the vote by a Republican majority at the time. There was only one Democrat on the Board of Supervisors. And I won $5 million more for the County Office of Equity and Racial Justice. I believed that there should have been more money allocated. We have a county, 3.3 million, over 3 million residents in our county. There's no way that $1 million could do equity work. And so I argued that there should have been more funding. I argued in my board letter that there should have been more consultant that worked with the Human Relations Commission, which I was on at the time, to ensure that we brought in the best and the brightest to staff that office. And that we put forth a vision that was equitable, that we can handle that equity work, and that's countywide. That's policy. We need stronger policy on foster care and education. We need stronger policy on all kinds of issues that are facing our community, and it's got to come by rooted, significant policy at the federal level. I talked about the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We've got to see policy. That's the paper. That's the root of the solutions that really can come forth. And we need to take the data and create that policy. And then obviously, finally, we need electeds who will go and govern for the people. by
With
the
the
people.
people. That's
And
right.
I think the unique thing that is really, really important, especially when we talk about social justice, is we need electeds who will do the studying themselves. You
Mhm.
can't depend on staff for everything. Staff are there to help you, but we've got to have electeds who are really, 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 really out in the community, really, really, really studying, really, really reading, really, really doing data analysis, so that they can actually work with their staff to solve the problems, the deepest ones facing our communities, whether you're talking about homelessness, whether you're talking about jail deaths, whether you're talking about reimagining policing. We need strong electeds who will go there and govern on an equity basis. And I think one of the things that your club knows well is you have a significant role in that process, bringing people to the Board of Supervisors, bringing people to the state elected offices, bringing people to federal offices who are really serious about getting stuff done and who are going to
Absolutely.
listen and govern from that place. So I
Absolutely.
think this has got to be a vision of bringing America together, and that's what I
It's
think.
time to bring it together.
Yep.
It's been, it was severed. It's like they said during the Obama days, the people just kind of went to sleep. And then it was like we were shaken up from a nightmare when and again, I almost don't even like to say his name, the 45th president came into office. So now, but what that did was it just really brought what was an undercurrent. It turned the belly up, and now it's out there. We know that it really didn't go away. It just went, we just kind of went to sleep thinking the world was getting better, but now we're faced with reality, and it is right here in our face today. And this is something that we're going to have to stay woke about. And with that being said, is there any questions, Mitch?
I think no, I think we've covered everything here. There was a lot of interesting discussion in the chat about the jail situation and the sheriff's race, which I urge people to scroll back and review.
Can we hear from Kenya? What would you like to hear from Kenya?
I'd just like to say thank you for having me here tonight.
Closing remarks, 1 minute or less. Closing remarks from the panelists. I think they can listen to all of you all night.
Katie, I'll let you go first.
Oh, thank you, Sean. Or I'm sorry, Shane. I'm so sorry. So I just want to thank you guys for inviting me to participate in this discussion. I think I can say as a white person, these are not always and someone who struggles with conflict, right? These are not easy conversations to have, but and often we may stick our foot in our mouth and say the wrong thing, but that's just part of the process. And I think we all have to be willing to be open and vulnerable and be willing to make mistakes and figure it out together. I want to thank my fellow panelists. I think you guys are just brilliant and you brought wonderful things to the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
would like to make a closing comment if I may.
Thank you. Please do.
Thank
Kenya.
you so much for having me. And, one of the things that I learned about the La Mesa Foothills Club that was different than other clubs was don't divide Democrats. There's strength in numbers, there's strength in unity. And I really appreciate this club for trying to set the tone throughout the county, because when one of us loses, we all lose. We need unity more so now than ever. 2022 elections are approaching us very quickly for the primary and the general. There are a lot of people out there that aren't sure what to do because so many families have been negatively impacted by COVID. We need to make sure that we elect people who care about us, regardless of our demographics. Yes, the term woke keeps coming up. However, we all need to be woke. If we're sleeping, we're not doing our jobs as Democrats. We need to be here to unite, work together not put all our playbook on Facebook or social media so our opponents take what we want to do and use it against us. We need to be more responsible. We need to close the generational gaps in our party. We need to have more dialogue, more open discussion about our differences in a respectful manner. And I appreciate this club so much. I see people that I've talked to a number of times, a couple of new faces too, but we need to start having discussions because everyone on our streets don't believe the same thing. We need more respect. And I thank this club for setting the tone for the Democratic Party, because as a member of our executive board for the California Democratic Party, we just see so much going on that loses our focus. And Tina, you have a strong club here, making sure people do what we need to do to get more people elected. So thank you so much for your dedication for our down ballot races as well.
And I thank you so much, Kenya, for coming. I do. That was, I just texted you and you answered right away. So thank you. Thank you, Katie. Shane, now you got me doing that. Shane.
All good.
Close us out with about a minute or less.
You know, Katie said it best. You know, we all put our foot in our mouth. And I think the key is that we all have to learn from each other. We all have an opportunity to grow and evolve. And I've talked about all the professional stuff that we need to do, but this really is hard work. We really got to get to the core of ourselves. We really got to grow personally and show up in the best ways we can with the love, the grace, the peace, the hope, the opportunity, and not focus on the hate, the bigotry, the anger, the disagreements, but look at where we find common ground. And I think this club has said that on multiple occasions. We've got to be balanced. Every Democrat's not going to be the same. We've got to look at our party as a world and an opportunity of diversity, an opportunity of chance, and an opportunity of clarity. For everybody has a different vision, a different perspective. We got to bring all of that together, find common ground on what we can work together on, and let's rebuild civility in America. So thank you.
Yeah, that's excellent. Civility. We really need civility right now. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Shane, Kenya. I truly enjoyed moderating this topic.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
So much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Doc.
Yeah, thank you. I'll turn this over to Mitch.
Great. What a fantastic panel that was. I really learned a lot and was grateful for the opportunity for that. Thank you, Brenda, for hosting, taking on the hosting duty for that hour or so. And now we're going to move on. It's time to pass the virtual hat and get some contributions to the club, some financial contributions. If you have not paid up your membership, please do so now, and I'll give you the URL in a moment. And if you can make an additional contribution, please do so. Your contributions help bring you programming like this, in-person meetings when we return to that. And most importantly, they help elect Democrats and advance progressive policies. And I can see that Katie Seghetti once again has beaten me to it and pasted that donations information in the chat. Or if you didn't get that URL, you can just go to the website, Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club.com, and click on the Become a Member Contribute link at the top of the page. And now we're going to make some time for local leaders to talk about things that are important to know about. Please click that raise hand button if you've got something to tell the members, or leave a message in the chat, and we'll call on you and give you the floor for a minute or so. I see we have 2 hands raised. Let's see who they are. We'll start with Doug Case. I'm going to ask you to unmute momentarily. Soon as my stupid computer lets me do that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. This was a wonderful panel presentation tonight, as well as the 2 original speakers as well. I'll be very brief, given the lateness of the hour. I do want to report that last week, the Senate President Pro Tem, Tony Atkins, who I work for, came to an agreement with the governor and the Speaker of the Assembly to provide for additional 2 weeks of additional sick leave for individuals who have become sick with COVID-19. Those benefits ended on December 31st. The agreement would make them retroactive to January 1st and would expire on September 30th. This is really important because with the Omicron spread, we don't want people, going back to work when they still have symptoms or still could be contagious. And we don't want people losing money because they do the right thing and they don't go to work. And so this will help everybody all the way around. And there also is a provision in the agreement that will provide additional grant relief to businesses to help fund the additional cost. And so I'll talk more about the state budget the next month, but I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug. So our next speaker is Matt Strabone. Matt.
Thanks, Mitch. Hi, everybody. First, sincerest thanks to Brenda for moderating the panel tonight. Brenda, I thought you did a great job. Thanks also to Mitch for hosting these as always. Mitch, you always do a great job. This was a nice full meeting tonight. I will be as quick as possible. Yesterday, I announced that I am running for La Mesa City Treasurer. Between now and November, I'm going to explain to each and every one of you how this office will help us get more for La Mesa if the office is in the right hands. What if I told you that we could get more services for La Mesa without raising a single cent in taxes or cutting a single other service? It might seem strange, but it's true. I look forward to making this case to you between now and November. I look forward to seeing you all in person. Until then, feel free to go to www.mattforlamesa.com to learn more. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt. So our next up, we're going to hear from Patricia Normandy Dillard. Patricia. All right, well, we can come back to Patricia momentarily. She seems to be having some technical problems or something like that. Next up, we have David Dodson.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the great program. As a former San Diego State student, I remember it fondly and enjoyed the program. So my name is David Dodson. I'm a progressive Democrat running for the Board of Equalization. I'm the most qualified candidate running for the board.
And David, can you do anything about your audio? You sound like a robot there.
For 30 years. I run the Southern California office of the Board of Equalization, and I'm committed to using my knowledge in this very specialized field of here. Okay, let me try this. Can you hear me now?
Okay, David, we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back
okay.
to you, David. You can work on that.
Yeah, I turned off the camera. Nope. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, we'll come back to you. Keep your hand raised on the press. Keep the hand raised button so I don't forget you. So next we got Andrea Beth-Damsky. Andrea. I think I forgot to unmute Andrea, so let's do that now. All right, Andrea, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Beth-Damsky, Chair of La Mesa's Environmental Sustainability Commission for my third year. I want to thank Brenda and our panelists for a really poignant, heartfelt, and very important conversation. I popped in the chat that just as our panel was starting, my wife came in to tell me that a friend of hers had committed suicide, a Black and Indigenous woman in Seattle who she knows professionally. So the panel discussion was really very, very personally relevant to me tonight. And I appreciate hearing a lot about the impacts on mental health of poverty and other things that affect people and communities of color. I'm here running tonight for, gosh, I got all flustered about that, running for the Helix Water District Division 2. I'm turning my attention from environmental sustainability to water sustainability. Just got my my papers back from the Secretary of State, so more will be coming together on my campaign soon. I look forward to telling you more about it in the future, and I will pop some contact information for you in the chat right now. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea, and I'm very sorry for your loss. May their memory be a blessing. Next, we're going to hear from, try again for Patricia Normandy Dillard. You should be able to speak now.
Yes, I can speak now. Thank you.
There you are. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Again, I wanted to thank Dr. Miller for her great panel. Everybody was great and they made a lot of sense and it was really educational. So thank you again. My name is Patricia Dillard and I have two announcements I'm going to quickly make. One is that I'm running for AD 79 public ballot vacancy seat. And if you are a member of the Central Committee, would you please, I ask for you to please consider voting for me on March the 23rd. That vote is the with the East Area Caucus at the East Area Caucus meeting. I also want to announce that officially I am co-chairing with, well, Janet Castaños actually is with us as well, but we are co-sponsoring the La Mesa Juneteenth 2022 event. It is the first one, and we are very excited. We need lots of support and volunteers. We've already gathered a very good group, but we have a really long list of services that are in need. We're looking for vendors. We're looking for someone to paint children's faces. And we want to try to work to bring the La Mesa community together. And of course, this isn't just for La Mesa. You know, anyone is invited to attend, but we're excited. It's going to be at MacArthur Park on obviously June the 19th, which is also happens to be Father's Day. So please contact me. I'm going to put my information in the chat. And if you need to reach out to me for questions, or if you'd like to be a volunteer, please let me know, or Janet Castaños as well. And also, if you have any questions about my candidacy for AD 79, please reach out to me as well. And I'm happy to answer your questions. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So next, we're going to hear from Lori Saldana.
Thank you.
Lori.
Hi, good evening. And thank you for a very informative presentation tonight. And I know some comments came up by Dr. Shirley Weber, Secretary of State Shirley Weber, about the redistricting process. And that is something that has changed a lot of the boundaries, including in my own district. I'm no longer in the city council district that I was in before. They've moved me into a district to the coastal district and San Diego, and I am running for city council. So it is late breaking news, and but it is an area I represented when I was in the state legislature for 6 years. So I've already been endorsed by the Democrats for Environmental Action. I received a qualified rating by the Democratic Women's Club, and I wanted this club to know, because I've in the past, I've been very active with you and have enjoyed your meetings very much. So, and I just want to say one thing. I know it's been discussed about the sheriff's audit tomorrow. That's something Dave Myers and I really promoted over a year ago. We started pushing for this audit to get to the bottom of these deaths in custody. So it's going to be a pretty big deal tomorrow when this is finally released. As a state assemblywoman, I requested audits on inequities in hiring in the California State University system. And I know the Bureau of California Audits does an excellent job analyzing inequities, looking at disparities and outcomes, and really working to understand. Mayor Todd Gloria did this on the hepatitis epidemic. So I'm very proud that Dave Myers and I were able to work with others to get this through, and that Dr. Akilah Weber has been the one to sponsor this joint legislative audit request. So, so I'm Lori Saldana, former assemblywoman and now candidate in San Diego for District 2 City Council. And thank you very much for a very informative evening tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And now we're going to try David Dodson again, see if his technology problems have resolved. David.
Oops. Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Not really, no.
No?
Not really.
Okay, that's okay.
All right, we'll try you another day. Very sorry about that. These things do happen. Wish we all hate technology. I work in the industry, so I can say that. Next, we're going to hear from Shane Harris, who we just heard from, but we'll hear from him again, and we're happy to do that. Shane.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a separate, and thank you all. Some of you have called in, had wrote letters, had wrote emails on San Pasqual Academy. Many of you know the nation's first residential education facility for foster youth, located in Escondido. We worked on a bipartisan level to get that accomplished. We saved the academy. The first thing we did was we got the extension from the state, and it was actually Supervisor Jim Desmond who led on the motion to request that the state grant an extension. And then down the line, that provided an opportunity for a lawsuit that eventually turned a lot around, and the Board of Supervisors, majority Democratic, decided to reverse course on some of their original decisions to let the academy close. And, it was a very pivotal issue. So many foster youth were facing literally losing their home within a matter of 5 months. And it was clubs like yours, people out there within your clubs that made calls, that sent emails and said, let's keep that academy open. So I just want to thank everybody who made calls or who reached out in some way, shape, or form, and who said something about San Pasqual Academy, because that essentially is what has saved the academy and has allowed it now to be reimagined for all of the opportunity in the world that we can provide our foster youth. So thank you all for joining on that effort, and it was a team effort that made this happen.
Thank you. And now we've got Kenya Taylor again.
Yes, very quickly, my condolences to the friend of Andrea Beth. Suicide numbers are on an all-time high, unfortunately, or thoughts of suicide. I have people asking me every day, or telling me every day, that they think everybody thinks of suicide. That's not true. There's help that's out there, and I just like to say, with all the hard work that's going on out there and the difficulties in this pandemic and with life in general, if anybody has any questions regarding suicide or just concerns in general regarding mental health, please feel free to reach out to me. It's confidential, and I just don't want to see anybody else experience that, as I know you don't as well.
Thank you, Kendra. Yeah, I was looking through some old newspapers that had gone online from when I went to college, and saw the name of somebody all over the front page with a fellow writer and a friend who took his own life then. That was 30 years ago, and I sometimes wonder what he would be doing today if he was still with us. So anyway, a sad time. Anyway, I think that does it. I see no more raised hands. Unfortunately, we did have that one technical problem, but that candidate hopefully will be back to join us next week. I think it's time to wrap up and call it a night. It has been a very long but very productive meeting, and I'm grateful to everyone who spoke here and all of you for attending. You can look for a replay of this meeting soon on our YouTube channel. Just search for the Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club on YouTube and subscribe while you're there. Also look for links to the video on our website, Facebook page and group, and Twitter account, or in our email update soon. We'll get that up as fast as we can. The website is lamesa-foothillsdemocraticclub.com, or if that's too much for you to type, lmfdems.com. The Facebook page and group have the same name as the club. We have both a Facebook page and the group because that's the way Facebook works. On Twitter, we're LMFDems, and if you want to sign up for our email updates, go to the website, look for that Get Email Updates link at the top of the page. I think that's probably your best bet to stay on top of things. Our next meeting is Wednesday, March 2nd, which is Women's History Month, and we'll have programming appropriate to that. The March meeting will be on Zoom, March 2nd, with unstructured conversation starting at 6:30 and then the meeting itself at 7. After that, in April, we hope to return to face-to-face meetings, but yeah, we say that every month, don't we? Thanks for staying with us, and we hope to see you soon in real life. Stay healthy, stay sane. Good night, everybody.